He was not supposed to survive that night. The men who came for him were not amateurs. They had studied his route, timed his convoy, and positioned themselves perfectly. They had done everything right. They just didn't plan for her. It was a Thursday in late October. Seoul was cold, quiet, and wrapped in autumn, the kind of night where the streets empty early and the only sounds are distant traffic and wind moving through the trees. Ryu Jae-won was in the middle car of a 3-vehicle convoy moving through Mappo district just after midnight. Tinted windows, no noise, no attention. That was always how he moved, like a shadow. 15 years in Seoul's underground had taught him that the loudest men were usually the first ones to fall. He was 34 years old and had never once felt untouchable. That careful thinking was what had kept him alive. Tonight, it was not enough. He was reviewing a document his most trusted lieutenant had handed him. The Jeong Syndicate had been pushing into territories that didn't belong to them, and a response was needed. In Yi-won's world, disrespect had a very short deadline. He never finished reading. The first explosion swallowed the lead vehicle whole. 1 second it was there. The next, fire, smoke, and a force that shook the ground beneath them. Before anyone in Yi-won's car could react, the second blast hit both sides of the road at once. Coordinated, calculated, a trap that had been waiting patiently for exactly this moment. The driver swerved hard. The car flipped. Yi-won's body hit the roof, then the door, then the road, each impact harder than the last. He didn't feel the pain right away. The body has a way of going quiet when something truly terrible happens, like it needs a moment to understand what just occurred. He ended up on his back on the cold asphalt, staring up at a sky turning orange from the burning wreck ahead of him. Gunshots now, shouting, his men fighting back somewhere in the chaos. He tried to get up and his body simply refused. His left side felt wrong in a way he couldn't explain. His chest was heavy, a deep, wet pressure that his gut told him was serious. His vision was already beginning to blur at the edges, darkness slowly closing in from all sides. He had survived ambushes before. He had taken hits before. But something about this one felt different, final, like his body already knew something his mind wasn't ready to accept. His eyes closed. Amira had just finished a late shift. She worked 3 nights a week at a convenience store in Mappo, nothing glamorous, just honest work that helped her stay afloat while she studied nursing in Seoul. She was 23, Fulani by blood, Nigerian by heart, and had been in South Korea for 2 years, long enough to navigate the subway alone, order food in broken Korean, and learn that homesickness never fully goes away. It just gets quieter. She had her earphones in, listening to Burna Boy as she walked home, her coat pulled tight against the October cold. Her mind was only partially on the music. The rest of it was on her mother. Hawa Diallo had been diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer 4 months ago. The treatment was expensive, the kind of expensive that made Amira's part-time salary feel almost laughable. Every month she sent as much money home as she could, cutting her own meals, skipping her own needs, telling herself it was fine because her mother needed it more. That was not a sacrifice she questioned. It was just something she did quietly because Hawa had spent her whole life doing the same for her. But the bills were growing faster than Amira could keep up with. And lately, the worry had started sitting on her chest like something heavy that wouldn't move. She turned the corner onto the main road and stopped walking. The scene in front of her made no sense at first. Fire, overturned cars, men running, the distant sound of gunshots fading into the night. Her brain took a few seconds to catch up to what her eyes were seeing. Every reasonable thought she had told her to back away. Call emergency services. Do not walk into whatever this was. Then she saw him. About 20 meters ahead, half hidden by the overturned car, a man lying completely still, alone, bleeding badly. No one was helping him. Everyone around was either running away or too caught up in the chaos to notice. Her nursing instincts didn't ask for permission. They just took over. She ran to him, dropped to her knees, and immediately began checking. Airway clear, breathing shallow, pulse weak but present. A deep cut above his left ribs, blood coming faster than it should. Possible internal damage. He was running out of time. She pulled off her coat without thinking and pressed it firmly against the wound. Hey, her voice was calm, not because she wasn't scared, but because panic would not help him. Stay with me. Can you hear me? Open your eyes. His eyes opened slowly. Dark, unfocused, searching her face like he wasn't sure she was real. You're going to be okay, she said, holding his gaze. I'm right here, just stay awake. Jae-won looked at her, this stranger kneeling in blood and broken glass, completely calm in the middle of total chaos. And for a moment, everything else disappeared. The fire, the noise, the pain. Just her voice, steady and sure. Stay with me. Then the darkness pulled him under. Ryu Jae-won woke up on the second day. Not dramatically, no gasping, no sitting up suddenly. Just a slow return, like a light being turned up gradually in a dark room. First came the ceiling, then the smell of antiseptic, then the dull, heavy pain in his left side that reminded him, quietly but firmly, that he had almost not woken up at all. His lieutenants were there within minutes. Faces tight, voices low, already reporting 3 men lost in the ambush, 2 more in critical condition, the Jiang Syndicate confirmed as responsible. Revenge was already being planned. The machine was already moving. Jae-won listened, gave his instructions, and sent them out. Then the room was empty and quiet, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, Ryu Jae-won had nothing to do but lie still and think. He didn't like it. She came on the 3rd day. Amira hadn't planned to visit. She had given her statement to the police the morning after the ambush. She was a witness, nothing more, and had fully intended to put the whole thing behind her and move on. Seoul was a big city. Strange things happened. You didn't have to carry all of them with you. But she had looked up the hospital during a break at work, almost without deciding to. And then she had found herself at the reception desk asking about him. And then somehow she was standing outside his private room with a paper bag containing 2 cartons of banana milk and absolutely no explanation for why she was there. She knocked anyway. The man who said come in sounded nothing like the man she had found bleeding on the road. His voice was steady, controlled, like someone who had already decided how he wanted to be seen. She pushed the door open. He looked better than she expected, sitting up, an IV in his arm, his face still carrying the cuts and bruising from that night, but his eyes sharp and fully present. Those eyes found her immediately and stayed there, and for just a second something shifted in his expression. Not much, just enough. You're the woman from the road, he said. Yes, she held up the paper bag slightly. I brought banana milk. I didn't know what you liked, so it seemed like a safe choice. He looked at the bag, then at her. You came to the hospital to bring me banana milk. I came to check if you were okay, she said simply. The banana milk was just so it wouldn't look strange. Something moved at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile, more like his face remembering that smiling was something it was capable of. Sit down, he said. She stayed for 40 minutes that first visit. They didn't talk about the ambush. They didn't talk about who he was or what he did, though she wasn't completely naive. The convoy, the armed men, the way the hospital had an entire private wing cleared around his room, she wasn't blind. She just didn't ask, and he didn't explain, and somehow the conversation found other ground entirely. He asked where she was from. She told him Nigeria, Fulani, a small city before Lagos swallowed everything up. He asked what she was doing in Seoul. She told him nursing school, part-time work, sending money home. He asked why she had run toward him that night instead of away. She thought about it for a moment. Because you were the only one who wasn't moving, she said. And in my training, that's always the person who needs help the most. He was quiet after that. Not uncomfortable quiet, the kind of quiet that means someone is actually thinking about what you just said. Before she left, he said, almost like it cost him something to admit it, thank you, for that night. She nodded. Get some rest, Jae-won. She used his name without thinking. No title, no formality, just his name the way you'd speak to any person. He watched the door close behind her and sat with that feeling for a long time. The strange, unfamiliar sensation of being spoken to like a normal human being. She came back 4 more times before he was discharged. Each visit was easy in a way that made no sense given how different their worlds were. He told her small things, that he hated overly sweet food, that he hadn't slept well since he was a teenager, that Seoul in winter was the only version of the city he actually liked. She told him about her mother's cooking, about how Fulani sunsets looked nothing like Korean ones, about the specific loneliness of living in a country where you look like nobody else on the street. He listened in a way she wasn't used to, fully, like whatever she was saying was the most important thing in the room. By the 5th visit, she knew she needed to be careful with herself. She was walking home after that last hospital visit when a black car pulled up slowly beside her. The window came down. A man she had never seen, calm face, expensive coat, the kind of still that made her instincts stand up straight, looked at her without smiling. "Miss Diallo," he said, "we'd like to talk to you about Ryu Jae-won." Her stomach dropped. "We know about your mother," he continued before she could speak. "We know about the treatment bills. We know you are struggling." He held out a card. "We are not asking you to hurt anyone, just to get close. Pass along small information, that is all." She didn't take the card. But she didn't walk away either. And the man, who had clearly done this before, simply said, "Take your time, but not too much of it." She stood on that pavement for a long time after the car drove away. She thought about her mother. She thought about his voice. The way he had said thank you like it was something he rarely allowed himself to say. She thought about how, if she was being honest with herself, she was already looking forward to seeing him again. And she hated that the answer forming in her chest felt like yes.
Stories like this are made possible because of you. So if you enjoy what you're watching, a like, subscribe, comment, and share will really help the creator make more beautiful stories for you.
She took the offer 3 days later. She told herself it was just information, small things, nothing that would hurt anyone. She told herself her mother's life was worth more than her comfort, and that was true, but deep down, in the part of herself she was trying not to listen to, she knew she was also telling herself a story so she could live with what she had just agreed to do. She took the money they wired to her account that same evening, converted half of it, and sent it straight to Lagos. Her mother called the next morning, crying with relief. Amira sat on her apartment floor after the call ended and felt 2 things at the exact same time: the warmth of having helped her mother, and a cold guilt that she suspected would not be leaving any time soon. Jae-won was discharged 2 weeks after the ambush. He did not go back to his usual life immediately. For the first time in 15 years, his body forced him to slow down, no late nights, no high-pressure meetings, no moving through the city like a man who owned it. His doctors were firm. His lieutenants were protective. And Amira kept showing up. Not at the hospital anymore. He had called her the day after discharge, almost businesslike, saying he wanted to thank her properly and asking if she would have dinner with him. She said yes. They had dinner. Then he called again, and she came again, and at some point neither of them was pretending it was about gratitude anymore. He took her to a small restaurant in Yongsan that almost no one knew about, no cameras, no recognition, just good food and low lighting, and the kind of quiet that lets a conversation go wherever it wants. She wore a deep burgundy dress and her natural hair out, and he looked at her when she walked in with an expression he didn't bother to hide. "You look different outside of a hospital," he said. "You look less like you're about to pass out," she replied. He laughed, a real one, short and surprised, like it caught him off guard. She stored that sound away carefully. The months that followed were the best of Amira's life and the most painful. Best because Jae-won in private was nothing like what the world assumed he was. He was quiet more than loud, thoughtful more than impulsive. He remembered everything she told him, her mother's name, her favorite song, the way she took her tea, and he showed up for small things in ways that meant more than grand gestures. Once, when she mentioned offhand that she missed a Nigerian food she couldn't find in Seoul, he located a West African grocery store 40 minutes away and sent her the address with no explanation, just a message that said, "I found it." She felt herself falling and could not stop it. Most painful because every 2 weeks she sent a brief report to the men who had recruited her. Small things like they had promised, Yi-won's general movements, names she heard mentioned, patterns in his schedule, nothing that felt like a weapon. But a lie doesn't have to be loud to be heavy. Every time he looked at her with that steady, trusting gaze, the one that said, "You are the one person I don't have to perform for," the guilt pressed harder. She kept telling herself she would stop, that she had sent enough, that she would find another way to handle the remaining bills. She never stopped, not yet. He told her he loved her on a quiet Sunday in February. They were in his apartment, she was reading. He was watching her the way he sometimes did when he thought she wasn't paying attention, and he just said it. Plainly. No setup, no big moment. "I love you, Amira." She looked up from her book. "I'm not good at many soft things," he said, his voice steady but his eyes more open than she had ever seen them. "But I know what I feel, and I feel certain about you." She put the book down, crossed the room and held his face in her hands and said, "I love you too." And every word of it was completely true, which made it the most complicated moment of her life. He proposed in April. He took her back to the small restaurant in Yongsan, the first place he had taken her outside of a hospital, and at the end of the meal he placed a ring on the table. Simple, elegant, a thin gold band with a single stone. "I don't want to keep doing life without you in it," he said, permanently. She said yes before he finished the sentence. They were married in June. Small and private, just the people Yi-won trusted most, and a video call to Lagos where Hawa Diallo watched from her hospital bed with tears on her face and one hand pressed to her heart. It was the happiest day of Amira's life. And it was the day she made her decision. That evening, after the celebration had quieted, she typed a message to her contact and sent it before she could change her mind. "I'm done. No more reports. Don't contact me again." She put the phone down and felt, for the first time in months, like she could breathe properly. The reply came within the hour. "You don't get to decide that, Mrs. Ryu." She stared at those words for a long time. Then she put the phone face down and told herself she would deal with it tomorrow. She was not going to let anything touch this night. What she didn't know was that her exit had already set something in motion. The faction that had recruited her, led by a man named Oh Si-jin, one of the most calculating figures in Seoul's underworld, was not afraid of Amira. What they were afraid of was what she now represented. She was inside Yi-won's life completely. She knew who had recruited her, what they had been trying to find out, and how long the operation had been running. A woman with that knowledge, now married to Ryu Jae-won, was not just a loose end. She was a threat. Oh Si-jin did not panic. He simply changed strategy. A direct attack on Yi-won had already failed once. His men were too sharp, his security too tight for another ambush to succeed. But Oh Si-jin had learned something from watching Yi-won these past months, something more useful than any security detail or weapon. Ryu Jae-won had a weakness now. He had let someone in. And the most effective way to destroy a man who couldn't be touched physically was to destroy him from the inside, to take the one thing he trusted completely and turn it into the thing that broke him. 3 weeks after the wedding, Oh Si-jin walked into a meeting Yi-won had called with his lieutenants. Not with weapons, not with threats, just 2 men behind him and a photograph in his hand. He placed it on the table without a word. It was Amira, standing beside Oh Si-jin's recruiter's car, on the night she had first been approached. Taken by a camera they had placed there themselves, kept for exactly this moment. "Your wife," Oh Si-jin said, looking directly at Yi-won, "didn't find you by accident that night. She has been feeding us information since before you left the hospital. Every report, every name, every movement." He paused, letting each word land. "We don't need her anymore, but we thought you deserved to know what you married." He wasn't there for a fight. He was there to light a match and walk away. The room went completely still. Every lieutenant looked at Yi-won. Nobody spoke. Yi-won looked at the photograph. His face showed nothing, that practiced stillness that had carried him through 15 years of a dangerous life. But something behind his eyes shifted in a way that had nothing to do with anger and everything to do with pain. "Get out," he said quietly. Oh Sejin smiled, turned and left. When the room emptied, and it was just Yi-won and that photograph, Ryu Jae-won, who had survived ambushes and betrayals and a world that had never once been gentle with him, sat down slowly and felt something break open in his chest that no physical wound had ever come close to. Because it wasn't just that she had lied. It was that he had felt safe with her. For the first time in his adult life, he had felt genuinely, completely safe with another person, and that was exactly what had been used against him. He didn't call her. He didn't shout. He sat in that empty room for a very long time, holding a photograph of the woman he loved, trying to understand how the best thing that had ever happened to him had started as someone else's plan. He was gone when she got home. Not physically, his things were still there, the apartment was still his. But Yi-won was sitting at the dining table in the dark, and the way he looked at her when she walked in was something she had never seen on his face before. Not anger, not coldness. Just distance, the kind that feels worse than either. "Yi-won," she set her bag down slowly. "What happened?" He slid the photograph across the table, without a word. Amira looked at it. The ground shifted beneath her feet. She had imagined this moment before, in the quiet, guilty corners of her mind, where she had rehearsed what she would say if he ever found out. But standing here now, watching him look at her like he was trying to find the person he thought he knew and coming up empty, every rehearsed word dissolved completely. "Let me explain. Did you take money to spy on me?" It wasn't a question. His voice was flat and quiet in a way that was far more devastating than shouting would have been. She didn't look away. "Yes." The word landed between them like something that couldn't be taken back, because it couldn't. He nodded slowly, the way people do when something they were hopping wasn't true gets confirmed anyway. He stood up, walked to the bedroom, and closed the door. Not a slam, just a quiet final click. That sound undid her more than anything else could have. He didn't speak to her for 4 days. He was present in the apartment, but unreachable, leaving early, returning late, moving through the same space like she was something he was waiting to stop seeing. He was not cruel. He didn't shout or threaten or punish her the way a man with his power easily could have. He was just gone, present in body and completely gone everywhere else. And somehow that was worse. Amira didn't sleep properly. She stopped eating full meals. She sat with her guilt the way you sit with something you know you deserve, not flinching away from it but not knowing how to move through it either. She called her mother once, couldn't get through the first 2 sentences without her voice breaking, and ended the call saying everything was fine. On the 4th night, she knocked on the bedroom door. "Yi-won, please, just give me 10 minutes. If you still want me to leave after that, I will." Silence, then the door opened. He sat on the edge of the bed. She stood near the doorway, not closing the distance, not yet, just making sure he could see her face clearly when she spoke. "I didn't know you when I said yes to them," she began. "I need you to understand that first. You were not a person to me yet. You were a name, a powerful man I had accidentally saved. That's all." He said nothing. He was listening. "My mother had been fighting cancer for months, and the bills were swallowing everything I had and everything I could send. I was exhausted and scared, and when they came to me with an offer I knew was wrong, I said yes anyway. Not because I didn't have a conscience. Because I was desperate and I chose my mother's life over my integrity, and I have lived with that guilt every single day since." She paused, steadying herself. "But Yi-won, and I need you to hear this, the moment I started knowing you, really knowing you, I couldn't do it cleanly anymore. Every report I sent felt like cutting myself. I kept telling myself I would stop. And when we got married, I did stop. That same night, I told them I was out." Something shifted slightly in his expression. Not softness yet, but attention. He was tracking every word. What I didn't know, she continued, her voice quieter now, was that me leaving was what made them dangerous. I knew too much. I was inside your life completely. So they didn't come after me, they used what they already had to come after you instead. They used the photograph, the timeline, everything, not because they cared about your feelings, Jae-won, but because they couldn't break you any other way, and they knew I was the only thing that could. She stopped. Her eyes were steady even though everything behind them was unraveling. I am not asking you to forgive me tonight. I'm asking you to know the truth, all of it, before you decide anything. Because you deserve the truth from me, even if I gave it to you too late. The room was very quiet. Jae-won looked at her for a long time. She didn't look away, didn't try to fill the silence. Then he said, low and measured, "You should have told me." "I know. I would have helped your mother." Those 5 words hit her somewhere so deep that her eyes filled before she could stop them, because she believed him. She had always, on some level, known that he would have, and that was perhaps the most painful part of all, that the very thing she had compromised herself to get, he would have given her willingly if she had only trusted him enough to ask. "I know," she whispered. "I know that now." He asked her to give him time. She did. She moved into the second bedroom and gave him the space he needed without pulling away completely. She was still there, making tea in the mornings, leaving the light on present but not pressing, letting him find his way back at his own pace. 3 weeks passed. Then one evening she came home to find the dining table set. Not elaborately, just 2 plates, 2 cups, food from the restaurant in Yongsan packed neatly in containers. The same restaurant. Their first real dinner outside a hospital. Their proposal dinner. He was standing by the window when she walked in. He turned when he heard the door. He looked like himself again, not the closed, distant version of the past weeks, but the man she had watched slowly come alive over months of quiet evenings and honest conversations. The man who sent her grocery store addresses with no explanation. The man who had said, "I feel certain about you" on a Sunday afternoon like it was the simplest truth in the world. "I've been thinking," he said. She set her bag down carefully. About the night you found me." He moved away from the window, closing the distance between them slowly. "You didn't have to stop. You didn't know me. You owed me nothing. But you knelt in the middle of all that chaos and you held on and you told me to stay." He stopped in front of her, close enough that she had to look up to meet his eyes. "Everything that came after was complicated," he said quietly. "But that moment, that was just you. No money, no plan, no agenda. Just you deciding that a stranger's life was worth saving." Her breath was unsteady. "Jae-won." "I'm not saying it didn't hurt." His voice was honest, unhurried. "It did. It still does a little. But I have been sitting with all of it, the lies, the guilt, the way you looked at me every single day knowing what you were carrying, and I keep coming back to one thing." He reached out and took both her hands in his. "You are the only place I have ever felt completely calm. In 34 years of a life that has been anything but calm, you are the only person that made me feel like I could just breathe. And I am not willing to walk away from that because someone else tried to use it against me." Her eyes were full. She didn't try to stop it. "I should have told you," she said. "From the beginning, I should have just told you." "Yes," he agreed gently. "But you were trying to save your mother. And I think, if I'm being honest, I understand that more than I want to admit." He lifted one hand and pressed it flat against his chest, over his heart. "She saved me twice," he said softly, almost to himself. "Once from bleeding out on a road in Mapo, and once from spending the rest of my life not knowing what it felt like to be truly loved." He looked at her directly. "I'm not letting go of that, Amira. Not for them. Not for my pride. Not for anything." She stepped forward and closed the last distance between them, resting her forehead against his chest. His arms came around her, steady, certain, the way he did everything. They stood like that for a long time. No words, just the quiet of 2 people finding their way back to each other. Then she felt him press his lips to the top of her head, and he said, so quietly it was almost just breath, "Don't ever carry something that heavy alone again, not while I'm here." and she held on tighter and said, I won't.
Thank you for watching, and if you like mafia stories like this, please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment your thoughts on this beautiful story.